reviewed.
What do we want?
Science.
Peer reviewed.
Science.
Peer reviewed.
Science.
Peer reviewed.
Science.
My name is Michael Mann. I am a climate scientist. I direct the Earth Systems Science Center at Penn State University, and I'm here at this event to speak out in defense of science, including the science of climate change, at a time when science is very much under threat. I feel it's important for scientists' voices to be heard, and that's what today is about, hearing from scientists about the importance of science, the importance of continued support for science.
You've, as it were, had to go into the belly of the beast in this recent congressional hearing where basically it seemed like science was on trial.
Much of climate science today appears to be based more on exaggerations, personal agendas, and questionable predictions than on the scientific method. Those who engage in such actions do a disservice to the American people and to their own profession. Only when scientists follow the scientific method can policymakers be confident that they are making the right decisions. Until then, the debate should continue.
When you consider that, somewhere between 97 and 99% of the scientific community recognizes that climate change is real and human-caused, and yet at this hearing, I was really the only scientist of the four witnesses representing the scientific consensus, and the other three individuals have contrarian views about the science, about either the basic science of climate change or denying the impacts that climate change is having. So I felt it was important, despite the fact that the deck was obviously stacked against me with three contrarian witnesses. I felt it was important to make sure that there was a voice for science at that hearing, and I feel pretty well about the way things went. I mean, in the end, the other side doesn't have the science on their side, and they don't have an honest case to make because the science indicates that this problem is real. So that was really the main message, and again, I felt like the voice of science did actually get heard at that hearing.
And I guess the other side has the fossil fuel industry on their side. Is it as simple as that, really? That it's just the fossil fuel industry's interests who now are sort of dominating Congress and this administration?
Well, you have to look at their actions and their deeds. The current administration. Donald Trump is a climate change denier. He's appointed to head the EPA. Scott Pruitt, who's a climate change denier, who actually actively worked as Attorney General of Oklahoma to try to prevent the EPA from controlling carbon emissions. His Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, the former CEO of ExxonMobil, the largest fossil fuel corporation in the world. So there's no mystery here about what's going on. The science of climate change has inconvenient implications for those who would like to see an agenda of ongoing reliance on fossil fuels for energy. Individuals, corporations, front groups who have advocated for the fossil fuel industry now have a very prominent voice in our government. They're represented in the administration of Donald Trump and through congressional Republicans like Lamar Smith, who held that hearing a few weeks ago, attempting to call into question the overwhelming scientific consensus behind human-caused climate change.
So if we could do maybe some stock taking, where are we at in terms of cutbacks or proposed cutbacks to scientific research, I guess mostly related to climate change, but I understand they're talking about even cutting like the NASA satellites.
That's right. I mean, it's crazy, really, when you think about it. We rely on satellite technology to provide us the information that we need about the atmosphere in the ocean. It informs our ability to forecast the tracks of hurricanes and to improve the science of determining the intensification of tropical storms and hurricanes. There's so many basic lines of evidence and data streams that we rely upon for public policy and to mitigate risk and hazard. And so to try to defund these satellite missions simply because of the inconvenient data that they're gathering about the reality of climate change is just so wrong-headed. It's hard to even describe. It's fundamentally a threat to all of civilization. It's sort of like knowing that your child has a fever of 103 degrees and then deciding to stop measuring the temperature anymore because you don't like the information that you're getting. That's effectively what the Trump administration is trying to do here. It's a threat to all of us. So I hope that that those budget cuts, that those defundings will not be implemented. Of course, we don't yet have a budget, and until we have a formal budget that passes Congress, nothing is locked in yet. So there are threats of making cuts to major scientific programs, to NASA, to the National Institute of Health. Remarkable, 20% cut in the National Institutes of Health is just, to me, is remarkable that we would want to cut back on basic research helping us cure cancer and other diseases and ailments. It's just so wrong-headed that I have to think that it will not pass Congress, even though there's a threat now.
Also, with the EPA cuts, they're also talking about cutting research money, ARPA-E, the research wing that works on renewable energy innovation. What could be the impact of cutting those research funds from the EPA for scientists?
There's a threat to scientists whose work is supported by grants from National Science Foundation, the EPA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, NASA. The scientific community relies on support from all of these government agencies to do the critical cutting-edge scientific research that ultimately has made us, has given us the international competitiveness that we have as a nation, the progress that we have made, and the leadership that we have had over the years when it comes to science and technology is a result of the basic funding that our government has always recognized needs to be provided to the scientific community. And so to cut back on that funding is to basically unilaterally disarm in the global economic challenge of the next century.
And you've done a recent study on the link to extreme weather events and the Arctic, and it seems we're every week seeing another study on more glacial melts and more extreme weather. Is it kind of like evidence just ramping up?
Yeah, well, part of the problem here, it's the veritable tip of the iceberg, right? Once you see, when the Titanic saw the tip of the iceberg, it was too late. And sort of climate change is similar. Once you start to really see the impacts on extreme weather that we're seeing now, what that means is below the surface, there's a lot of additional climate change that's now locked in. And even if we dramatically reduce our carbon emissions in the years ahead, there's a certain amount of climate change, additional warming and additional climate change impacts that we will suffer no matter what we do. There is a huge procrastination penalty when it comes to the issue of climate change. That's why it's so urgent to act now, so that we don't lock in dangerous and irreversible changes in our climate.